Good morning, everyone. You're all really welcome. We're going to make a start. I think there's still a few more people who are joining, just while I sort of give some words of welcome. So look, welcome back to day 2 of the Safer Internet Forum 2021. And thank you so much for choosing to attend this particular deep dive, which will focus on online gaming. Some of you may be aware that there are a couple of parallel sessions going on this morning. So there is another deep dive, which is focusing on CSAM. If you're expecting that one, you're in the wrong room. This is focusing on online gaming. I'm sure that many of you attended some of the sessions yesterday, and gaming was mentioned, particularly during the last session where Vic Baines was talking about some of the immersive experiences that are developing so quickly. And some of the more observant of you might have noticed that one of our speakers today posted a comment in the chat when Vic was talking about VR. And Tommy said that it had actually been around for a long time, which I didn't doubt. But I followed the link that he shared in the chat, and I was really surprised to see the article say that the first VR technical developments were actually in the 1830s. Yeah, the 1830s. So clearly a lot has changed since then. As a reminder, the deep dives at the Safer Internet Forum are designed to get us thinking about opportunities and risks of online games in this case, but to propose some solutions and to talk about who needs to take responsibility and make these solutions a reality. So we've got 2 excellent speakers this morning to help us to do just that. Firstly, we're going to hear from Tommy Tossavainen, who will be known to many of you, particularly those from the InSafe network, because Tommy is part of the Finnish Safer Internet Centre. He works for the National Audiovisual Institute. Importantly for us and for this session, he is a media and game literacy expert. He's done so much in this field. He's coordinated the Finnish Game Week for the last 10 years. He's conceptualized and edited 2 game educators' handbooks, and he's helped to create a network of over 2,300 professionals who are all working to promote game education in Finland. And given some of the discussions yesterday about age classification, Tommy also represents Finland in the PEGI, the Pan-European Game Information Council. Our second speaker today will be Laura Higgins, who used to be part of the InSafe network as well, but is now the Director of Community Safety and Digital Civility at Roblox. And like Tommy, Laura's been working in the online safety space for many years, and the Digital Civility Initiative at Roblox is focused on providing the community who use the games and the platform with the skills that they need to create positive online experiences. I've known Laura for many years, and she's been working in the online safety space for the last couple of decades, and she's passionate about the importance of making the digital world a better place for children and young people. Please do make use of the chat facility. You did that really well yesterday, and it was great that there was so much interaction in there. We'll do our best to address as many of the questions and comments as we can. The plan for the session is that we'll hear from Tommy first, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A. Then we'll move to Laura, and then a bit of Q&A. And what I'm hoping we'll have time for at the end is a bit of a wider discussion with both the speakers and we hope with some of you as well. So there's a lot to get through. Without any further ado, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll just share my screen here. Okay, so Carl gave me a great presentation already, so I'll just briefly talk about games in the past, and let's take a quick trip down the memory lane, look at the prevalence of gaming now as a pastime, and then focus on what we as safer internet experts can do to promote a more positive and safe gaming culture. If you have any questions, just type them on the chat, and I can see them from here, and if it's relevant, I'll just answer it right away. But we have the Q&A after the session. Let's look back a bit. I was a child in the 80s, and my pastime was free time was spent in the forests and fields, running, building forts, playing with toy guns, BB guns, self-made spears, bows and crossbows. It's kind of a miracle I survived the 80s to see the digital age. The fort building and playing together, playing war together with friends is still quite active and alive in this day and age. The tools are often safer than they were in the 80s, and children can play these games from the comfort of their homes. As our society has become more digital, our free time is also much more digital and often a lot safer. The games in the 80s were simple, but still quite engaging. We used to spend hours playing video games without worrying about things like screen time, for example. When our parents finally got annoyed with us or the beeping sounds of the games, they just kicked us out of the house for hours at a time, and often without any idea where we spent those hours. In the 90s, video games gained much more popularity and also a lot of notoriety. First-person shooters and other violent video games became a huge concern in the media. We saw games like Mortal Kombat, for example, hotly debated in the media, and these games were also the games that have created an age rating system for video games, which is still something that we use today. In European countries, we have the PEGI rating system. PEGI is meant for parents to make informed decisions about video games. They're some consumer information in a way that tell us what kind of a harmful content the game might have for younger children. And what's important to note is these content descriptors only describe the content of the video game, but as video game play moves from a single player experience to more online games and online experiences, the harm that relates to video games is more often interplayer relationships, toxic online communities, and things that are not in the game, but in the game culture surrounding the game. Europeans are quite active video game players, maybe not as active as Finnish gamers, but still over half of the European population play video games. Younger children tend to spend more time on video games naturally, and as we age, we spend less time on video games. That might change as the younger video game players become older, but at the moment it's still young people's game, so to speak. When it comes to video games, men do tend about 2 times as many hours and 4 times as much money on video games, but women still are active video game players, and half of the video game populace is women. What's possibly of interest is that video games are also a pathway to STEM careers. Playing video games can increase interest towards science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which are quite important as we move to an online, always online and playful future. Luckily, this situation is as it is at the moment, because back in the 80s there was a huge mistake made, which has caused a lot of issues for the gaming culture at the moment. During the 80s and early 70s, there was a fast period of growth when women were choosing computer sciences as a university major in the United States. Then in the middle of the 80s, women's interest in computer sciences plummeted, and this is something that some believe are because of the personal computers that were introduced to the market, and they were marketed heavily to men with ads such as these and boys. So video games were chosen to be the domain of men. When we look at these marketing decisions from the 80s and how they have affected our gaming culture at the moment, we have seen some quite severe repercussions on this. This is a typical game development studio. These are two Finnish studios, and if you look at the people working in game development, they are quite an all-male panel still. Game developers are about 80% men, and many game studios only employ men. And when men make games to themselves and to other men, we get games such as the Grand Theft Auto 5, for example. This is a AAA game that was published a couple of years ago where you can play 3 men. So it's one of the examples of what happens when male-only game studios decide to make games. And female characters in video games, even when they're not major characters, tend to be over-sexualized. This is not an exaggerated example, but just maybe on the other end of the spectrum. This character is from the Metal Gear Solid 5 series. She's quiet. Her name is because she's made mute, and she's almost naked because she's affected by a parasite which forces her to breathe through her skin. So the male authors, male game developers have created a story that has given them the license, so to speak, to show an over-sexualized female character in the game, who is mute. When it comes to the effects on the, for example, the gaming industry, this has led to a often hostile working environment for women. As a male-dominated field, the gaming industry is plagued by sexual harassment, and this is also quite prevalent in many online gaming communities. Girls, women, and minorities suffer verbal and abuse when playing video games online, and many choose not to use voice chat, for example, because if the players you are gamers you are playing with hear that you are a woman, they will often derail the gaming experience for you, and it's just easier for many girl and female players to just not use the microphone, and this is also, of course, can be an issue. So we need a lot of initiatives that combat hate speech, racism, misogyny in online games, and in addition to what work we are already doing in the internet, for example, and social media. And we need also initiatives to diversify the field of computer sciences and gaming industry. This is not just a problem for the gaming industry. We have seen a lot of aggressive sexual harassment relating to people who are quite active in trying to promote equality in the gaming field. Some men might feel that their domain is being overtaken by women and casual players, and we saw a huge active harassment campaign a couple of years back called the Gamergate, which was nothing more than misogyny targeted at women who are active in the field of game journalism, for example. When I was asked to give this presentation, there the organizers wanted to see some solutions also for this. So I'm going to give you some examples from Finland, what we have done to to combat the issue, or to maybe give women and minorities some avenues of trying to get into the gaming industry and playing video games in a safe place. These are some initiatives by the city of Helsinki. They are organizing gaming activities for sexual minorities and for girls, safe spaces that provide the opportunity to play together without any influences, without the stress of playing together with men, for example. There are some initiatives also to organize esports events that are targeted only to minorities, and these are all something that we can also promote. Another initiative is Mimmit Kooda, which means Women Code program. This is something done by the gaming industry or technological IT field. They have organized free workshops for women and without any previous experience in coding. But since coding is something that is something that we really need, these initiatives are really important to maybe get people interested in coding and then give possibilities for changing the work area of expertise, for example. Do you believe that separating video games by gender, a video game just for women, separating video games? I think we need more games that have a better representation. I don't think it's separating video games by gender, but we just need more minorities in primary key roles, for example, in video games, or the option to choose your gender, which is something that is moving forward. Yeah, and there is a lot of toxic masculinity also in the way that male characters are shown. The weakness is something that is often lacking from video games, from video game characters, and it's quite a narrow role model for boys and men who are playing video games, and we need a larger representation. Another issue, in addition to the gender issue, is the consumerism aspect of video games. This is something that has lately gained a lot of notice due to the addition of loot boxes in video games. As the gaming model is moving from a single purchase model to games as a service model, where you buy the game and then the game is updated all the time, we are seeing some issues. For example, when it comes to young people who are spending money on games that are similar to gambling. We're talking about the convergence of gaming and gambling in a lot of ways. For example, in FIFA Ultimate Team, there is an option to buy loot boxes in the form of card packs, and from these card packs you can get better players, and these are bought with the in-game currency in these games. What is often not advertised to the players is that the chance of getting the better players like Ronaldo here are quite small, so you have to buy a lot of packs, hundreds, to get the certain singular player you're looking for. Here are some chances of getting a player, a certain player, for example, in the game. And when it comes to the higher end characters, like Ronaldo here, it's less than 1%, so you have to buy hundreds of packs to get a chance to get this character. And this can be quite the money sink. It's often problem even for adults who have a lot of income, but when it comes to children and young people, we have to talk about the issue and maybe come up with some ideas on how to tackle this. We have a working group here in Finland that's formed of the necessary bodies like the National Police Board and Consumer Authority, and we're talking about what we should do. Many countries have already decided to ban video games or make them similar, or they think video games as gambling, and which of course makes them for adult only. And these games are marketed heavily to the younger population. So this is one aspect of what you can talk about in your respective countries. And another issue that's often related to video games is the issue of screen time. Screen time is some consider screen time an important tool for moderating children's media use, but there are others who believe that screen time is an obsolete relic from a bygone era. And when the media is giving such a polarized opinion on this, we need official guidelines for parents and educators on how to navigate these mixed media messages. For example, in China, the video game playing is limited to only 3 hours a week recently, while in the Western studies, we are seeing more and more information about studies about how time spent on video game playing can be good for your well-being, and the impact of longer play sessions is quite small when compared to other health-related issues. We have written, as Carl said, a couple of game educators handbooks. These are free of charge. I will link them in the chat after this session, and these are, because they are created with InSafe money, they are free of charge to you if you're interested in localizing these. And when it comes to screen time, in our most recent book, we try to find other ways than a universal screen time that's applicable to all. Children and young people are individual, and their individual needs are often quite diverse. So parents and caregivers need more granular methods for talking about the time, setting time limits in their home. Here are some examples. You don't need to set a 2-hour time limit. You can change the limits to, for example, daily time slots, daily screen time, or just say you can play until the end of this level. And there's some pros and cons to each of these. So we're trying to give some food for thought for parents to maybe understand gaming as something that's more in-depth than just the time that children are spending when they have the chance. Schools and cultural institutions are currently experimenting with game technologies such as virtual and augmented reality. While games can be efficient in teaching limited concepts, the technology is something that's often seen as a solution for educational issues. But when we look at the stories about successful adaptation of video games in schools, it's often the result of an interested or active teacher who is into video games themselves. And this is when video games can offer something. When you have a motivated educator who is fluent using these technologies, they can use them to greatly enhance educational situations. But until we have a lot of teachers who are quite into video games will not be the solution for educational issues. This doesn't mean that we can't talk about video games in education. For example, we can talk about how video games are constructed. We can make game reviews in any situation, because games are such an important part of children's and young people's culture. We can take them as a focus and talk about creating video games and designing games and teaching game literacy through these methods. And we can also talk about how games are represented in the media. It's easy to get children interested in talking about video games, and we can use this interest to promote media literacy in a lot of ways. You have written so many questions. I think we'll need some moderations to find out some of those, and I'll try to comment on after this presentation. We need to discuss video games in safer internet work, because it's the most important new medium that children are using. Video games in Finland are already the third most popular hobby for children and young people. Only organized sports and fitness or personal physical exercise are ahead of video games. So music, anything else has become second place. So in order for children to really master the medium, they need adults who are ready to talk about these kind of difficult issues, because if we don't talk about these issues, children will have to navigate their own way, and the online communities can be quite harsh places until you are adept at moving there. I think that's my time, 25 minutes, so I will try to answer all your questions now.
Tommy, thank you so much. You packed an awful lot in there, and I really appreciate you keeping the time, and you've already addressed some of the questions as you've gone through, which is great. I do want to sort of try and pick up on a few of them, and there were so many, so I've got lots of them sort of written down here. One question was from Angelo, who I think is one of our youth panelists, and he says, do you think computer addiction started from when these games were published, or do you think that it's something that's really been accentuated by the pandemic?
No, the discussion of computer or video game addiction has been quite long. It's not because of the pandemic. The pandemic has maybe brought it to the front because children have nothing else to do at the moment when everything's closed. But it's not a new phenomena, or at least the media discussion about it. And now we probably see a more relaxed view due to the COVID situation, that it's becoming more accepted to spend time with the video games. But I think what we should focus more in is on we tend to look at video games as the subject of our worry, but the worry is often something else, like not moving or not exercising, or sitting in a bad position, and that can cause headaches, for example. Sleeping too little, staying up to play video games. These are the issues that we need to fix, not playing the video games.
Thanks, Tommy. And I seem to remember, I know we've got lots of expert colleagues on the call, but I think I read some research from SIF that was done across Europe after the sort of initial lockdowns, and there were some real positives in there, you know, talking about young people saying it's how I felt connected to my friends. It was the only way I could hang out with them. But also what I thought was really important, I think it was around 20% of children said, I actually, you know, for the first time started playing these games with my parents, and that was a really positive experience. So I think, you know, the pandemic, it's often, you know, talk about the challenges, but I think there's been some real positives there as well. There's another question here from Marta, who's from DG Just at the Commission. And she says, I wonder if creating separate spaces for female players or minorities is a desired solution in the long term. And she says she agrees that it's a great initiative to give an immediate opportunity to enjoy gaming, but doesn't it just reinforce the separation?
Absolutely. It's a stepping stone. So until we get a larger representation of women and minorities in the gaming communities, we need safe spaces for them. And the end goal is, however, to play all together without any prejudices.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I'm just going to open this up just before we pass across to Laura. If there are any colleagues in the audience who'd like to actually ask a question, if you raise your hand, we can give you permission to unmute. I know that there's been an awful lot of stuff in the chat and many really helpful comments. And I wanted to say thank you to Dirk and Beata and Shweta, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, for sharing some really, really useful links there as well. Elizabeth, I can see that you've got your hand up. Hopefully one of my colleagues can give you the power to be able to unmute. I think I've just done it. Can you try and unmute, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Excellent stuff. It is. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi. Hello. Good morning. I just wanted to say thank you so much for, being allies and bringing up these topics because they are so important. And while I agree with Tommy that this is a start, that this isn't the solution, because I personally, obviously, I think that segregation is never going to be a great idea. But the flip side of segregation is, in fact, safe spaces. And so I think that's really important to stress that. And so I just wanted to, kind of put a virtual clapping for really raising this topic and getting it out there, because the more we think about it, the more we can protect those vulnerable gamers until they're no longer vulnerable.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Yeah, and I applaud that. I think everyone is in agreement with that, and thank you for reinforcing it. Stefan, I've from the JRC, I've just given you permission to unmute as well. I can see you've got your hand up. Would you like to make a comment or ask a question?
Yeah, so thank you, Carl, for this opportunity, and thank you again to Tommy for this brilliant presentation, which encapsulated so many things. I just wanted to underline that indeed during the lockdown, we've made some interviews of children aged between 6 to 12 years old, and during this period, online gaming became the new playground for boys, especially. Girls were more attracted to social media and platforms, singing platforms, and exchange of pictures. But boys certainly found socialization into games that allowed them to speak and play at the same time. So that was really clear from our data. And as you said also that parents got more involved in that world as well, and they are closer thanks to this crisis than ever before. Now the question would be, will it last or not? Will they take the opportunity to be, to continue this journey with their children or not?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an important issue, and it's something that we can also promote, that these experiences we've had during the COVID is something that we take forward, and I think we can all try to give parents and caregivers tools to continue these discussions, because we are already seeing media screen time warnings in the media that now that the lockdown is ending, what are we going to do about screen time? So it's a great time also to promote a more balanced view on the typical day, for example.
Thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Stefan, as well. It'd be great. Drew's already said if we might be able to share the link to that so we can make it available. It'd be really interesting to be able to look at that in more detail. And just one final one before we do pass across to Laura. Frida, one of our youth panelists, would you like to unmute Frida?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can, yeah, hi.
Yeah, great, hello. So yes, I am from Finland too, and I am Frida and one of the big youth panelists. I actually got a great amount of links to how families can help their young players, but I actually got a question when the last questionnaire mentioned online school and gaming. Is there any places that, for example, teachers can check how they can help students in online school? So with, they might get, students might get like distracted with gaming while they actually should be concentrating on studying. So is there any like places where teachers could get any help how to connect with the students and help them with the online gaming stuff? I don't know if you got the point what I'm trying to say, but like how can teachers help the students with the gaming?
I think that's something that's been on the forefront of every teacher's mind during the pandemic, but I'm currently not aware of any such a repository where this kind of resources are. Here, I think the chat will provide us with a lot of links.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Frida, for the question. I think it's really important. And again, I would point people to the Better Internet for Kids portal, where there are a huge amount of resources aimed at different stakeholders. I know that many of you are familiar with that, but do have a look. And yeah, as Tommy said, the chat is now alive with suggestions, handbooks for teachers, and so on and so forth. So look, let me thank Tommy. He's not going to go away because we'll hopefully have some time at the end. But now let me pass across to Laura from Roblox to hear what she's got to say. Thanks, Laura. The floor's yours.
Thank you, Carl. And that was fantastic, Tommy. Really, really interesting topic. During my presentation, I will, of course, be addressing quite a few of those things, hopefully. But before I do, just that last bit we were talking about, with having parents being part of their children's online lives, I just wanted to share something that a parenting blogger called Elizabeth Broadbent recently just shared, and I mean literally this week, her experience of bonding with her 3 kids through playing Roblox. And she said, if you can manage it, give your kids games a chance. I thought it would be a fun experiment. I didn't think my kids and I would enjoy it as much as we have. We were a Roblox gang of Brookhaven miscreants with a tank. I haven't laughed that hard with my kids in a very long time. It was cooperative and fun and subversive, and I had rainbow fairy wings. So I just thought I'd share that one with you. Okay, I'm going to just share my screen with you. 1 second, please. And technical issue straight away. Do apologise, 1 second. There we go. Thank you. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. So, as you know, I am Laura Higgins. I'm the Director of Community Safety and Digital Civility at Roblox. I've been here nearly 3 years now, believe it or not. And prior to that, I was with the UK Safer Internet Centre. And so I know I've seen lots of familiar names coming up as everyone's been entering the session. So I'm really pleased to be back here speaking at Safer Internet Forum and with all of you on such an important topic as well. So thank you for having me here. So I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of Roblox, particularly this thing, the metaverse, which I'm sure you will all have heard being thrown around, a little bit about how we deal with safety, particularly on our platform, and thinking about what, some of those issues that Tommy raised and how we try to address them. And then, of course, just touching on, the future actually, and thinking about, the next 10 years, the digital decade, and what that might look like. So what is Roblox? I'm going to make a big assumption that many of you probably already know what Roblox is. But for us, Roblox is much more than just a gaming platform or a video game. So it is really this place where people can come together at a time when we can't be together in real life. Back to that point of through the pandemic, we really were able to offer a place where people could still congregate together. But it's a collection of different experiences. So people can come together with their friends, and they can go through everything from a concert to entertainment. They can go and hang out at a skate park. They can have a lesson taught in a university, whatever it is that they want to do. It's all these kind of different, really meaningful different experiences that people can have. Every little bit of it is user generated within our platform, so we'll come on to that a little bit more. We have millions of people all over the world connecting every day. So the metaverse, you will have heard this term bandied around, I have absolutely no doubt. So it was originally coined in 1992 in a book called Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. It is very much rooted in science fiction, but I think what's really important is the fact that now it is actually happening for real. For us, we have these 8 tenets around what we believe the metaverse needs to exist. And as you can see, most of these things are things that we're very proud of within Roblox itself. We very much feel that we are kind of ushering in this metaverse. We see Roblox itself as a place where billions of people could potentially connect and do things, and we don't see limitations about what Roblox could be used for. So we know that people come together to create together. We have people building experiences when they live on totally different sides of the world, for example. We do have those sort of abilities for people to come together and recreate anything that they could do in real life within the digital life that they have within Roblox. One of the things I think is really important to point out is the fact that metaverse isn't a destination. It's not that we're trying to get somewhere that is a metaverse. The metaverse is always growing, it's always changing, and it's a really organic thing. So as I say, it's as big as your imagination, essentially, and that's what we're trying to do. One of the things we see very much on Roblox is that people want to bring their authentic selves into this metaverse. They want these real kind of role play type experiences to also be able to socialize and hang out with their friends. Obviously with this, we have to grow with it. We have to make sure that we're putting all of those safety and all of those tools around it. So we'll talk about some of that in just a moment. But yeah, so essentially the metaverse gives us an opportunity to be incredibly creative. And I think that's one of the things we're most proud of at Roblox, is just this ability to kind of seamlessly move from one experience to another and to be able to live your life online. So some metrics from us, and actually I'm going to bring in some other interesting facts here as well. So as I mentioned, everything on our platform is user generated, and we're on track for our developers to earn $500 million this year through the things that they're creating. And as I say, we provide the infrastructure via something called Roblox Studio, where they learn how to create these games and can build these different experiences. We also have all of our catalog items are user generated. And obviously, we have these millions of experiences, as I mentioned. I'm going to pick up particularly on the female developer side and the fact that, to Tommy's point, we need women working in STEM to be role models, but to build these thoughtful kind of experiences and games. So we've seen 100% growth in women and girls coming on, both under 16 and over 16, since the pandemic. And so, that's a huge growth. One of our stories I just wanted to share again is a young lady who came and joined Roblox when she was 8. She started developing on the platform when she was 15. And last year she raised $20,000 for a non-profit working with ocean conservation, just through one of the experiences that she built on Roblox. Those are the sorts of stories we really need to get out there to inspire young people. to encourage them to, you know, really want to build these, you know, thoughtful and positive spaces. She has now gone on and actually, you know, she's a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and so she's now doing philanthropic work, raising money for those and being a role model within our community as well for those kind of underrepresented groups. And it's really important that we elevate those voices where possible. So a little bit, you know, I think this is what I was mentioning about the metaverse. For us, you know, we have been told that we were literally a lifeline for people during the pandemic. We brought together, you know, families who were in different parts of the world and couldn't be together. We provided a space where people could throw birthday parties for their kids in safe servers where kids could just get together with their school friends, for example, online. And so I think, you know, us being able to provide these spaces, with that comes a level of responsibility, which of course we take really seriously. So I'm going to give a very quick tour of safety at Roblox and what that looks like. And hopefully that will show that we are being thoughtful about some of those concerns that Tommy raised as well. So we have different pillars that we focus on in terms of safety, and we take a very multi-layered approach to safety across the platform. So we have this automated chat filters, which you can see demonstrated there very quickly. Essentially, we don't allow any profanity, we don't allow hate speech, harassment, all of those sorts of topics. And if people try to type them in, it's all hashed out and the person will never see them. Obviously, if there were very egregious rules being broken, if it was really offensive and harmful, that we would probably then take sanctions against the person who is trying to break those rules, as well as it being prevented from being shown on screen. We also use the same systems to prevent sharing of PII. You are not able to share your name, usernames, telephone numbers, addresses, or any of those things. It's all filtered out. And we also have additional restrictions for under 13s. We have a whole raft of tools for parents to use where they can turn off chat. They can decide, we have a curated list of games, for example, that are suitable for the younger players on the platform. This does not mean that we don't have restrictions in place for over 13. We just are slightly more liberal in terms of, for example, they may be able to share some of their social media channels if it is relevant to the account that they have. So, for example, if they are a verified developer on the platform, they may be able to link to their Twitch or their Discord so that people can continue engaging with them off the platform. Like everyone, and I would really expect to see this on any platform, but sadly it is not the case. We do have a very robust reporting system for our players where they can report a person, a behavior, a comment, a game, an inappropriate name, an inappropriate item within the catalogue, any of those sorts of things, and it will come through. And obviously we use a mix of AI and human moderation, and of course block, which is still a very powerful tool, and we encourage young people to use that where possible. We have content moderation, of course, as well, because it is a user-generated platform. It is really important that we are reviewing all the assets coming into the platform. So any images or video or audio assets are actually moderated by a human. We have over 3,000 agents now working around the world 24/7 in different languages. And so, you know, as well as that, we can then have moderation of the published experiences as well. So it's assets going in, and then ultimately before something is allowed to be live on the platform, it is moderated as well. And then obviously, you know, such an important topic at the moment is around account integrity. So we really are making sure that we know who's on the platform, that we are verifying them, encouraging people to have email and phone verification for their accounts, 2SV, really important. We have now things, we have always had these things in place around trying to help prevent unauthorized purchases. So now, at the first time somebody tries to make a purchase, they will get a warning that this has to be authorized by an adult. We don't store any billing information, all of those sorts of things. And then there are regular reminders throughout as well. We do have a very generous refund policy. You know, there are times we know where young people will sometimes bypass the system to be able to kind of purchase things within the platform, but we work very carefully with families to ensure that they're both minimized and that we're dealt with very appropriately and quickly if it does happen. And so on to my stuff, digital civility. So as mentioned, you know, we launched this in 2019, the idea being that we wanted to provide families caregivers, educators, kids and teens with the tools and knowledge that they needed to have these really healthy, positive experiences when they were online, and not just on Roblox, but when they're on other platforms as well. You know, we've all talked and we all understand the importance of teaching digital literacy. Well, one thing that we, you know, as part of this initiative, we were actually one of the founding members of something called the Digital Wellness Lab, which is a group of organisations coming together to really share best practices, but it's led by Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Teaching Hospital, and Dr. Michael Rich, who I'm sure many of you may have come across, the paediatrician. And, you know, really looking at having this kind of evidence-based and, you know, evidence-based approaches and advice that we can give to families about protecting young people. And one of the things that Dr. Rich talks about is this idea of digital mastery. You know, we know that kids are actually being taught the basics of literacy at school, and hopefully through a lot of these organisations that are here today. But what we're trying to do now is go that one step further and say, okay, you're doing pretty good. You've got some of this basic stuff down. What else can we teach you? What else do you need to just keep really empowering them to have this positive experience? Another thing that's part of my work in the civility work that I do at Roblox is really around, and I think this is a lot of, to Tommy's point, is about listening, finding out what's really going on for the community. So we can make assumptions about what safety needs to be in place and how we manage data, and we can work with partners all around the world to achieve some of those things. But actually understanding what's happening within our community is really, really essential for us to try to amplify as well some of those issues, the problems and things that people really want help with. For us, our community isn't just on Roblox. We know our community, our Roblox community, are also on social media platforms. They're also on other gaming platforms. They're on chat apps. They're everywhere. And, you know, we feel it's really important that we're trying to understand what their life is like outside of that. And so to that point, I'm delighted to announce, hot off the press, we announced this about an hour ago actually, that today we have launched a partnership with Internet Matters, the digital parenting organisation in the UK. And the first thing that we did together was to carry out some research. Again, back to this idea of it's how important it is that we talk to young people. So through August, we carried out 3 focus days with a group of teenagers to really find out what was going on for them across all the platforms that they're on. So talking broadly about internet use. So you can see some of the key findings here. Some of them were surprising, some were less so. On the whole, it was a really positive feedback that we received from them. And just to stress, these were not all Roblox users. They are just a group of teens from lots of different demographics. So, you know, feeding back things like the fact that they felt a completely new person. It brings out the best in them when they were online. The teen gamers in the group definitely came across as more confident. They felt they could really be themselves when they were in those gaming spaces. And again, when we were talking about how they made friends and how they connected with people, it really brought them together because they had that similar shared interest with people, as opposed to on social media, where perhaps it was a bit more tricky navigating, you know, where your similar interests were. Great to hear, as we were talking about how teenagers make friends, how they choose who they want to hang out with online. They were really cautious and they were very much, you know, quite au fait with things like, you know, catfishing, and, you know, they could tell when people weren't being genuine or weren't being authentic when they were there. And the flip side of that, when we were talking about them and what their identity was, they didn't want to come across as being inauthentic either. So that was quite an interesting thing. The next one about having parents involved was fascinating. So in 2019, we did a survey with 4,500 teenagers. And at the time, 63% of them said they wanted their parents to be more involved in their online lives. And this was picked up, I think, in Tommy's and one of the questions previously. Through the pandemic, we repeated this piece of research, and we had just under 4,000 respondents, I think. And this was May 2020, so in the midst of the first lockdown. And there was a 30% increase in people saying, fantastic, my parents are much more involved and I really appreciate that. We're really happy now. Fast forward to now, where people's lives are pretty much starting to go back to normal. Kids are back at school, parents, you know, probably back at work a bit more. And these teenagers were all collectively saying, I really wish my parents were more involved. I really wish they understood my online lives. They kind of leave me to it. And I just think it's so fascinating. You know, we were very hopeful, I think, that when we were seeing this increase in parents being involved, that would continue. And it's just from this very small cohort that we talked to, it would appear that parents have kind of gone back to their old ways a little bit. So I think there's definitely a point here where we all need to take action and make sure we're keeping that message going about family engagement. Creativity for us at Roblox is a really essential thing. You know, we're as I say, you know, a user-generated platform, so that sort of just speaks to the creativity. And also we want people to have these to be able to be creative even with their own avatar and who they want to be. Fear of judgment came out quite strongly. Now, it wasn't related to specifically the gaming group, but people who were just generally creating content across different platforms, they were seeing comments about other people or negative feedback that people were getting when they were uploading content, and it was actually stopping them from then wanting to create it in case they got the same. So again, when we're thinking about how we can improve the spaces and things that we need to be mindful of, I think it's important that we give people the opportunity to be creative, but perhaps to stop some of that feedback to be able to give more control to those young people so they can do it in a space that they're more confident in. And then time limits, the screen time discussion. This again was really interesting. Bearing in mind this was an older group of teenagers that we've been talking to, they were kind of obviously very clear saying through the pandemic, I was online all the time, whether it be doing school, whether it be for fun, whether it be connecting with my friends. And I think that speaks to all of us, adults and young people. But now that things have gone back to normal, what they were saying to us is, I know I need to get a bit more control and I need to get a bit more sleep, and it sometimes might affect me a bit. They knew what they needed to do, but they were struggling a little bit to get that balance back. So again, this is where we can have those conversations. I think it's a real opportunity to give them sort of some control back, but support them in that. We need to have those conversations and remind them and encourage them to make those healthy choices for themselves. And then finally, the thing I wanted to touch on really, which I think is the very forward-looking thing, is around safety partnerships. So at Roblox, and particularly with my job, this is one of the key things that we really have to focus on. So we, you know, looking at working with safety organisations, we're working with law enforcement organisations, working with governments and regulators. You know, as Tommy mentioned, there is so much going on right now, particularly here in the UK, with things like age-appropriate design code and the Online Harms Bill, the Digital Services Act that's coming in, all of these things. It's really important that we as tech companies, we're not fighting them, we're not resistant to that, but we're part of that conversation. You know, we can help to shape some of this conversation. We can help them to really understand what happens and what our limitations are, what we can and what we can't do, and to make these regulations and legislations usable and you know, as opposed to, as I say, fighting them all the time. Working collaboratively is essential. Like I said, we share this community. Our community is on all these other platforms, so we need to all work together to up our game, to provide these safe spaces and positive communities, so that when somebody goes from one platform to another, they should be able to expect the same level of support, the same level of safety, and we can all work together to increase, you know, to improve that platform. I hate to quote Boris Johnson, but we're levelling up, and it's something that we all really need to do. And this is on a global scale as well. You know, it's fantastic. There's a huge amount of collaboration happens here in Europe, but we need to keep doing it around the world. You know, one of the projects we were involved with a couple of years ago was with Microsoft and Thorn, Project Artemis, where we were all working together to try and come up with a way of monitoring for grooming language across platforms. They've then made that open source and free, so that all small startups who probably wouldn't have access to that kind of technology now have the ability to have that on their platforms. And I'd love to see a lot more of that happening, to really kind of build these safe spaces. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour from me. I'm going to stop there, I think, and come back to you for any questions.
Laura, thank you so much. You packed an awful lot in there. We really do appreciate it. I mean, I love what you were sort of talking about in terms of the creativity and about inspiring young people. I mean, that's what this has to be about. And I think, you know, this is about the opportunities as well as the risks. There were quite a lot of questions, as you can imagine. Some were quite specific about, you know, the sort of moderation and stuff. So I'll maybe just quickly come to a couple of those. Barbara from the Austrian Safer Internet Centre, I don't know whether you can answer this, but how many moderators do you actually have?
So we now have 1,400 staff at Roblox, and when I joined we had 400, so that's how quickly we've grown. But we have just over 3,000 moderators working around the world.
Thank you, Laura. Nice straightforward answer. A question from June at the European Commission. In terms of grooming, do you have any specific tools to detect grooming? Did you have anything you can say about error rates and so on?
I can't share error rates. So we have various systems that we use. So I did mention Project Artemis, which we use. So that runs across the platform all the time. Of course, we use things like PhotoDNA. And whilst people can't share images on the platform, we still feel it's important to run those on the off chance that they did, for example. All of our filtering obviously is picking up any of those things, and we're proactive in our response to those things. So we work really closely with NECMEC, and so we proactively would make reports if we were concerned with any grooming behaviour. We are also, you know, we work with law enforcement all over the world. So we work with the National Crime Agency here, for example, and we work with ICMEC and so on and so forth. So yes, is a very long answer to that question.
No, thank you, Laura. You mentioned about some of the restrictions and the moderation, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Pietian de Klerk is sort of saying, do you actually change the privacy chat restrictions based on the age of digital consent, which obviously does vary from country to country?
So you may have seen, and I didn't actually cover it in my slides, I apologise, but we very recently just launched our new age verification. So whilst we've always had additional tools in place to protect under 13s, and we will continue to have that in place, what we are hearing from our community is that they want, for some of them and for the older ones, a slightly less curated experience. So we've introduced age verification. It is very early days and we're still rolling it out at the moment. We wanted to be very thoughtful about how we did that. So we are using the safest solution we could find, which essentially is what US banks use. So hopefully that's pretty safe. But essentially it does mean that, for example, those who could be verified and show that they were over 18 at some point may be able to access voice chat, which you probably may have heard. We're also in the process of rolling out. It is going to be, again, a very slow process. It is something that we will start with the older members, and as I say, they have to be verified. We have to know who they are if they're using it, and these things are being rolled out very slowly. There will not be a time when we don't have filtering safety in place. All of these tools will always be there. It is just, as you say, about, you know, for example, would we get to a point where older people, if you were over 18, would you be able to have a slightly more adult conversation? Potentially in the future, but it's a very slow process. We do not want to rush into any of these things.
Great, thank you, Laura. And one from George, who's one of the youth panelists from Malta. And he says, you know, something I've always wished could be more promoted is Roblox Studio, which you did mention. And he said it's what brought a lot of people into game development, but he feels that it's perhaps not promoted enough. And he said the fact that hosting and visibility and tools are all taken care of and all you have to do is to be creative. And I just wondered if you have a comment on that. I'm sure you'd want people to, you know, be using
I mean, first off, that is beautiful feedback, so thank you so much. Yeah, I think absolutely right. It is, you know, without Roblox Studio, there would be no Roblox. Our whole platform is created by that community. So you're right. Perhaps we do need to shout about it a lot more and talk about what it does. So, you know, we're very proud. We do partner with a lot of schools, coding camps all over the world, particularly through kind of school holidays. We run lots of camps as well, and it really does teach young people from the very youngest age and the very simplest tools, really, you know, almost drag and drop. Here's how you create a game, right up to how to make really complex meshes and builds. I mean, now some of our artwork is just absolutely incredible. It looks the same standard as a AAA game. We now have some studios who started out just building on Roblox Studio and now employ over 30 staff. They are professional games building studios. So it's been wonderful to watch that. So yeah, absolutely. I will share some details as well in a moment so that people can go and have a look at it themselves.
Thanks a lot, Laura. And Laura, you've probably seen that Ian has made a couple of comments in the chat as well. He sort of creatively signed up to Roblox with incognito and used a fake adult age, and then as an 11-year-old. And he's obviously come across some content which, you know, I guess you wouldn't want to be there. I'm not suggesting you have to respond to this now, but I wanted to give you the opportunity because you've probably seen some of the comments in the chat.
Sorry, and I've gone on to mute as well.
No worries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't actually seen specifically those ones, so I will have a look through them. And please do reach out to me. We can continue this conversation outside of this session. It's really important. Thank you for flagging those. So I'm intrigued where we don't have a virtual strip club. Obviously, it's really difficult without me digging into these to have a look. I mean, we wouldn't allow any experience that was a strip club. So I'm intrigued where that's been found. Obviously, I would love to investigate that. We don't allow anything like that. And we have no intention of allowing games like that on our platform. So
absolutely. And I think Tommy's made a really important point. And, you know, we all know that this is the challenge with UGC, with user generated content, because once you're aware that it's there, you can deal with it and so on. And I know you proactively sweep and so on. There's a comment just come in there. Is there a trusted flagger system, and where can partners report?
So absolutely. We are just reviewing our trusted flaggers. It's going to be rolling out again, and we will be reaching out probably via Carl, who is on our safety advisory board as well. So we will make sure that that is available to all of the safer internet centres, and also via InHope as well. We currently, people are very welcome to come to me. So I will make sure also that you have my contact details, Carl. I'm happy for that to be shared with people. Just drop me a line anytime. We do that with a lot of our safety partners already. But yes, we will make sure that we share via the network as we roll out our more formal trusted flagger programme.
Now, thank you so much, Laura, and thanks for responding to all of that, which I threw at you there at the very end. I think what I'd like to do now, colleagues, we've got about sort of 5 minutes left. I'd like to sort of ask Tommy to join us again and just open this up more widely for colleagues to ask any questions and so on. So if you would like to contribute, if you want to just put your hand up and we will try and bring you in. So Veronica, if we can give Veronica permission. Do you want to unmute Veronica?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, yeah, hi.
Yeah, hi, thank you for great presentations. I have a question. Gamers usually use different platforms, right? They might be on different platforms, might also use social media. So I was just wondering to both the presenters if you have an experience of collaboration across platforms. And by this, I mean, for instance, if a child is bullied on one platform, the bullying sometimes migrates to another platform. And it would be interesting if the platforms already could somehow alert each other, maybe share some type of information, but I'm not really sure about that. If it's done, I'm also aware of GDPR, what are the restrictions, but maybe exploring ways of collaboration across platforms. Thank you.
I can very quickly speak to that one. So yes, through things like the Fair Play Alliance and our work, we have a working group with the National Crime Agency as well, which focuses on CSE. Now, of course, there are data protection issues. We can't just share cases and details about users. Of course, we would share with law enforcement if we had significant concerns. We do share things like trends and issues and those sorts of things. If there are particular terms that we're seeing on our platform and they become trends, then yes, we may share that. There are times where we have concerns that we may reach out to another platform. Obviously, within data protection, it is difficult in terms of what they can and can't share. But for example, we recently had an incident where we had some concerns about somebody. They hadn't actually violated any terms on our platform, but just generally in terms of, off-platform behavior, it was something we were concerned about. We reached out to another platform that we had heard had taken some action against them. Whilst they didn't go into details of why they had taken the action, they did confirm that that person had been banned off their platform for violating several all of their terms, and that was enough for us to make a decision. We equally did not want them on our platform. So even that level of sharing does happen and is very, very helpful. There are lots of discussions happening at the moment in this space with law enforcement about what the future could look like. Would we get to a point where we could share information if we were genuinely concerned about a bad actor who we knew was on different platforms? At what point and what level could we share? For example, you know, if somebody has been reported to law enforcement, is it then at that point that we might be able to share? Or if somebody had clearly been prosecuted of something, do we then have that kind of intel that we would share across platforms to protect our users? So there's a lot happening in the space, and it's looking quite hopeful, really.
Thank you, Laura, for that. I want to pass to Stefan again, if you want to unmute Stefan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carl. I have a question for Laura regarding the age verification process. On what is behind that exactly for you guys?
Do you mean as in why are we doing it now? I mean, it's one thing, obviously.
Not why, but how.
Okay, so as I say, we're using a system which is used by banks across the US. So it is for over 13, so they will need to have some kind of ID, government issue ID. Then basically the process goes through. You also have to prove that you're a living person, so you can't even hold up a photograph or, you know, fake it in that way. It's one of these that's very interactive. And yes, for under 18s, there's also an element where they can get parental ID as well to show that they are the age that they are. So as I say, we were very thoughtful about it. The initial solution that we had actually involved users going off platform to do the verification. And again, we didn't want that. We wanted something really seamless that kept people in the platform so that the user experience didn't put people off from doing it. And so we're really happy with the solution that we have now.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I was asking that because there are research as well going into recognition of the way people type or use artifacts to move on a platform, and by that you can actually recognize with quite a high level of accuracy the age of the user. And I was wondering if that was the technique that you were using or not, but apparently not. It's more based on elements or documents that are issued by others to be integrated in the process here. But thanks.
Thanks to you both for that. Laura, there's a quick follow-up from Ian. He makes the point that the examples he shared, you know, were relatively harmless visually, but asks, is there any plan, you know, to extend the age verification to 13-year-olds or the appropriate digital age of consent?
So to your point, you know, Roblox was built for young people to begin with. And so, you know, when we think about safety by design, yes, essentially, whilst we don't have everything on by default for under 13s, it is absolutely built that would be appropriate for an 8 or a 9-year-old to come on the platform. The reason we're doing age verification is to give a little bit more freedom to the older people coming on the platform. So yes, it is kind of built safety as standard.
Thank you, Laura, and we're out of time, colleagues, and I just want to draw things to a close. And before I sort of thank Tommy and Laura, I just wanted to share one quote from the report on the consultation that we did with children and young people. And many younger users spoke really passionately about gaming, as I think we'd expect, but many teachers saw it as negative and time wasting, which is something that Tommy highlighted. And I think in the consultation with teachers and educators, they talked about concerns around time spent online, and many associated too much time with gaming. And I just wanted to highlight that I think that there's a bit of a worry that if we restrict access to these platforms and experiences, we kind of hamper the development of skills that help children and young people to become more active participants in the future. It's something that Professor Sonia Livingston has highlighted, you know, this ladder of participation, which allows young people to build the skills and confidence that they need so that they can participate in digital deliberation. And I think conversations conversations like the one that we've had today are so important. It's sort of dispelling some of the myths, but absolutely, as both Tommy and Laura have highlighted, you know, there are challenges, but there are ways that we can address them. And so I want to thank you both so much. You've stuck to time brilliantly, which I really appreciate, because we have another session starting in 15 minutes. I also want to thank the over 100 attendees who were there, and particularly those people who contributed with questions, and also those people who shared links and are still sharing links, which is absolutely fantastic. We will collate all of this. We will share everything with colleagues afterwards. But thank you both so much, and hopefully we'll see you all at the next one, which is focusing on harmful but not illegal content after the break in 15 minutes time. But thanks everybody. See you shortly.